Some of the most interesting stories that any recruiter can tell are probably things that happened in the interviews between the candidate and the employer.
We're all human, we all make mistakes, but especially when you're in a tense, uncomfortable environment like an interview, candidates seem to make more mistakes than most.
If you want to make a really bad impression on a first interview, show up late. Traffic jams, the basic stuff that everybody goes through when driving somewhere during the day is not going to be a valid excuse for being late for an interview. Okay? Figure out where it is, figure out how long it takes during the worst times to get there, and give yourself a few extra minutes for the worst case scenario.
I would say the most basic issue that occurs is people show up late. That is a mistake. If you show up late, you might as well not show up at all. You're going to be ruled out.
During interviews, a mistake that a candidate could make is actually the clothing that they wear. First and foremost, if you don't present yourself in the right way, it could mean that you don't have the job.
They don't know the environment of the company. The company may be a more corporate environment where a business suit would be appropriate, or it may be a casual environment where business casual is appropriate. So not having that information ahead of time could hurt them on the interview.
One of the most unfortunate mistakes that candidates can make when they're going to visit a company that's not within driving distance is they don't keep all the belongings and items that they need for the interview with them on the airplane. I actually had a candidate that was flying to an interview a couple of states away. He got to his destination and his luggage was lost. He had checked his suit and his tie and his shoes and everything that he needed so he could go to the hotel and change, but it didn't show up with him. So he had to run around last minute, try to find something that was presentable, and then explain to the employer why he was underdressed.
A mistake that candidates make going into interviews, just the way they're groomed. For guys, it could be that they have a full beard like the one that I have, or they could have certain things showing like a piercing or tattoos. With girls, they could have way too much jewelry on, or even themselves they could have tattoos or piercings showing that I know these hiring managers. If they have a certain quirk with those things, I could give them a little bit of a heads up.
Another common mistake that candidates make is they don't prepare for the interview. They don't read up on the company, they don't go on the internet, they don't look at the company's website.
They may not look up any specific information about the company. They may not study the job description. They may not study the company's products. Okay. What they're doing is they're setting themselves up for an awkward situation when they walk into the interview and the first question is something like, tell me what you know about the company, and they sit there like this. Not a good thing. Okay. If they've done their research, they're going to be able to say, well, I know you were formed in whatever year, you had this amount of revenues, this is what your stock was this morning. Things that show that you prepared for the interview, all right? And that will stand out. That's part of those intangibles that really separate the person that finishes second from the person that finishes first during an interview process.
Not often, but we do get some of the people that we work with that think that they're God's gift to, in my case, engineering. We get some people that go into a company and their first impression is often negative because they act as if they're just as good, if not better, than the hiring manager, or maybe they're talking to another engineer, or somebody that has been in that very specific role oftentimes for years and years.
Usually the one that talks the most and is the loudest will not be the one to be hired. It's usually the one that's kind of, not certainly one that's participating, but one that's kind of more hanging in and, speaking when spoken to and volunteering relevant information gently.
If there's a candidate mistake during an interview process that really can get very awkward, it's when the company asks the candidate a question and the candidate doesn't really know the answer, so they fudge an answer or they lie about it.
They don't think that it's going to come back to bite them. They may not realize that our reference checks and our background checks are as thorough as they are.
This could be detrimental because, yeah, you could get hired, but once they do the background check and they find out exactly what your past is, you're going to be fired.
If you're not honest, you're not going to be able to get the offer you're looking for. You're not going to be able to get the information you need to make a decision on whether this is the right career step for you.
Another common mistake that candidates make is they don't fill out all the paperwork. They may be given a job application and they may write on their C resume or don't fill it out at all.
You don't put C resume. When you put C resume, you're disrespecting their process. The worst thing you can do is disrespect their process right from the get-go. You're going to be fighting an uphill battle.
Another big mistake candidates will make is when they're interviewing with a potential employer, they'll badmouth their previous or present employer.
Rather than taking responsibility, they say, well, my manager was a jerk, or I didn't get along with the team members. When somebody does that, it makes it look like they're not mature, or that they're not a real part of the team, that they want to pass the blame on somebody else rather than accepting responsibility. And if you're a hiring manager, that's probably not the kind of person you want to hire.